The first thing I did when I was doing the finance stuff was walk around and who do I know? I know construction people. So I talked to construction people. Hey, you want to buy mutual funds and life insurance? What do they look at me like? No.
What's that?
Was exactly. The worst was when I walked in. I remember walking up to this house somewhere just down the road from here, knocking on the door, and the husband opens up the door and he looks at me. He's like, "Oh, insurance guy's here." And I said,
You're that guy.
I'm that guy.
Welcome to another episode of Efficient by Design podcast. Today, we have again my brother Brad. And as our guest today, we have Jared Spencer, who is I was thinking about this earlier. Like, do I call him a good friend? Or is he like just a friend that I could say could become a good friend? Because we've been acquaintances for, I guess, like 7 years?
7-8 years, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I would consider you a good friend. Like, what does that actually entail? Like, it's not like we hang out on weekends, but, you know, our kids know each other. And
But if you called and there's a problem, I would do what I could to solve it.
That's a good friend.
So I guess it depends.
It's a good friend.
It depends on how you look at that. That's how I look at it anyway. So if I could call you and say, "Hey, Brad, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Can you help me out?"
Yeah. And I probably wouldn't. And so I would just be a friend.
Yeah. But I know a guy.
I know a guy.
yeah, and I would say actually, okay, so this is my good friend, Jared Spencer. He's done a variety of solids for me, helping out with all kinds of stuff with projects and contacts and stuff too, beyond our building connections. So a little bit of context as far as my original connection with you. There's a development about half an hour away from here, from where I live, that I built the first house in. It was a 230 lot subdivision, and originally, and the very first house I in that subdivision I built with a local builder from here, and then as at the tail end of that house, so this great big open landscape, these guys pulled this trailer in, and we're looking to do 4 houses as this new building company to maybe take on the entire subdivision. And they ended up kind of seeing us finish off this house, ended up hiring me on to do the first 4 houses with them. And I'm trying to think how long after that you ended up joining that company.
I started in May of 2014. That's when I started. So
how much was there when you came in? How many houses do you think?
Not very many at all.
Not many?
Not very many at all. Maybe half dozen. Maybe like
okay.
Jimmy was well over. It was too much work for him. So it'd probably be at least 10 homes.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, so say 10, 12 houses in, then you showed up.
Yep.
And then kind of took on project management and all kinds of stuff. So we ended up working together there for the duration of time that my company framed there, which I think was about 5 years.
Yeah.
I think
5-6 years. Yeah.
5-6 years. And then I exited and did a couple other little builds and then transitioned into tool belt stuff. And you guys know each other a bit through your wives.
Yep. Both of our wives are teachers in the same school district. And so, and I want to say they did some school together as well.
Yeah. They did some school together as well. Well, Emily went to UBCO.
Yep.
And I think they maybe did their last year together.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and then we also have, all 3 of us have a son in the same grade who all went to the same school.
Yep.
And so, that's also, I think we kind of rubbed shoulders more and more as the kids got to, but then when I was building my house, I actually came to you too, because you had everything from different stains and products. And Luke was like, why don't you go talk to Jared and he can tell you where he got it and how to get it. And so there was a bunch of those kind of interactions there, but then through the kids hanging out. And it's fun. I would just say, like, with those boys, like, they're the type of boys that, you know, they're going swimming in the middle of the winter. They're taking off into the forest and building forts. You know, I come around to the back of my house and there they are. All their clothes are off except for their little underwear. And they've got the sprinkler on and they're like tackling each other, jumping on the trampoline, you know? So it's been fun to see our 3 boys just like killing it together. So it's been fun.
And it's free living, right? Like free living, free play. None of the, like, it's not like scheduled and you have to do this. It's like in the woods play, like play that I knew growing up, that I understood. Not this
free range.
Yeah.
Free range kids.
Free range kids.
That's right.
Are we allowed to
Organic.
do that now?
That's right.
Yeah.
You're free run.
Yeah.
So let's go. So we spoke a little bit before we got started here in that. So the Okanagan Valley here in southern BC, you basically were a kid here from age 12 and on originally. Yep. So you went to school. Now you were in Summerland?
I was in Summerland and Penn High. Okay. I went to Summerland to begin with, and then I ended up graduating in Penn High. I like going back and forth a bit, the variety.
Okay. But you lived in Summerland the whole time?
I lived in Summerland the whole time, yeah.
And now there's a kind of famous house in town.
Yes, yes. My father built a geodesic dome in town. They call it the golf ball house, but it's a geodesic dome. He built them all over Canada, actually.
Really?
Yeah. They're like almost like you build triangles and you put all these triangles together to create a shell, and then you build around that. Yeah.
So is that the one coming up Summerland Hill up on the right?
That's the one. Yeah. So I grew up in the roundhouse.
That was your house.
Yeah,
that was the primary house.
That was my primary house growing up as a kid. So we started in Penticton and lived in a rental place for a short period of time. Then we moved to Summerland and lived in lower Summerland. And then we moved in a couple other places, like sold that and moved into a couple other places too while we did the build. And I remember I was 16, 17 years old helping my dad, shakes, up ladders. Like that's where it started. Like,
we got to hang out on this for a minute because
yeah.
I have so many questions now. Like I've known for quite a while that you lived in that house, but as we drive by it, so there's a main highway that goes through Summerland here, and up on the hillside, you see a portion of this geodesic dome.
Geodesic dome, yeah.
You see it up on the top of this hill, and then it's got this like triangular deck off one side too. That's a crazy looking thing.
Yeah.
And so I've seen it, and you mentioned years ago that was your house. I was like, oh, crazy. But it's not till now that I realized that it was like the primary residence. Like I thought it was like this other structure on someone's property is this kind of hobby funky shop. But that was the primary home.
No, that's we lived in that home for a minute. And and my dad we grew up a modest family. So it was everything, and he's a carpenter or renovator. He would never say I'm a carpenter. He says I'm a renovator. He was a renovator. And so he was constantly working on it and building it, and it's, you constantly like getting friend and family deals as much as you can, and you're just doing everything you can to piece together. And I didn't get windows until 2008 or 2009 when I came back and helped him set it
up. How many square feet is it? And so floors, I think it's about, how does that work?
It's 2,800 square feet. So there's the base floor, and there's the base floor. And if my dad watches this, he's going to kill me because I'm going to probably say it all wrong.
Okay, time out. Base floor. It's a circle. So where's the floor? Where does the circle start?
It's a foundation similar to a. You're not doing a round foundation. It was either an octagon or a hexagon or some pentagon, probably is what it was. Okay. And then you rest the triangle on the sphere on the footing itself. So imagine like a 2-foot standard frost footing, and then it has a crawl, like a little tiny crawl underneath it. And he's old school, so it was like sand and poly, not even like concrete and poly until just a few years ago. I helped him do that, which is another story, a nightmare. I was so bad.
So is your bottom plate that's resting on there? Is it is it plywood that's been cut out perfectly in a radius?
No, because it's it kind of cantilevers in a couple spots. But imagine a sphere resting on a octagon or a pentagon or something like that.
Is it half a sphere, or does it actually?
It's more like, I think it's 5/8. I'd have to.
So it actually does go out from the foundation.
It starts like this, and then you go all the way up to the top. Crazy. And then there's a cupola on the top, and that's kind of like his hideout, his little happy place.
A what on the top?
He calls it a cupola.
A cupola.
And I don't know where that comes from, but
like a chicken cupola.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's
like a crow's nest.
It is. And that's his happy place. It's like it's 360-degree view, and it's just,
how big is it up there?
It's small. It's like maybe 8 feet around, like 8 feet in diameter. So
and how many floors?
So 3 floors. There's main floor. There's a bottom floor. So imagine like a walkout. It's similar. He kind of set it up like a walkout. So base floor is walked out to the garden area, and on that floor is all the bedroom, most of the bedrooms. So there are 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, and then an open area. And the next floor is the kitchen, and then a master and an office and a bathroom. And the next floor up, so it gets smaller. So it's like medium, big, small, really small. So you really have to design, and it's super energy efficient. So well, I'm sure we'll talk about it after, but I really dork out when it comes to energy efficiency and trying to build homes that are cost effective and energy efficient, because it's hard to find both, because no one wants to pay for both.
Yeah.
They just want to pay for one.
Yeah. Where are the stairs?
The stairs are circular coming up from the bottom floor up, so they're like a spiral set, and then he kind of did like the second set are kind of pretty standard looking stairs.
Are they in the center or are they off to the side?
One's in the center and one's off the side. So the first floor up is right in the dead center, and the other one's to the side.
Is there any part of the house that's open right up to the top of the circle?
Absolutely, and that's part of the design as well. So the kitchen itself, there's a great big huge window. It looks like a diamond when you look at it. It's a whole bunch of imagine all the triangles you have here, but like on your design there. But there's a triangle at the top, and there are triangles at the bottom, and there are triangles that come down to like a cone, like a ice cream cone.
Yeah,
and that's their main window looking out.
Yeah,
crazy. That's so cool. I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm like trying to build this in my head and think of where bearing is and how the stairwell opening. That's so crazy.
So again, I don't want to take too much time. So the rooms, are they square and rectangular, or do they have more circular shape?
Everything is circular. Imagine like triangle modules, and they have battens on them as well. So you've got the triangle, and then you'll have a batten on each one, a batten, and then a sort of a button on the battens to protect the buttons. So they're just drywalled triangles that have insulated, polyed, and done, and then the air flows through the whole house. So he's set the flooring system away so air travels all the way through the house. He uses a tiny little heater, like a tiny little heater to heat his house. And if you have too many things running, like if you have the stove running and the dryer running and that little heater running, it's too much. They have to open up the windows in the cupola to cool the house, because it's so they're super duper energy efficient. He has a air exchanger system as well in it. And this is before I even knew any of this stuff existed. I didn't understand what he was doing. That's crazy.
That's so cool.
I just knew that I had to
So you can't put this kind of couch in there though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can. There are walls, and you build partition walls and you build walls,
right.
But your outer walls are either this or like this or that. Yeah. So it's a little bit tricky, but imagine being in a cabin in Apex and you got the really steep roofs. It's similar kind of, you just have to design around it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That was a fun tangent. Well, I got to come over. You got to take us for a tour or something. Sure. So cool. And your parents are still there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I just finished. So the pine shakes had lasted for 30 years. So I'm giving away my age there, because I was the one that humped all the shakes to my dad. There you go, Dad. More shakes. Anyway, so he's like, I need to replace this roof. So I took a few weeks off of work and redid the roof all the way around the whole thing.
What did you use?
Top. Just shingles. And it was hard. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Because I'm older, for one, but also just kind of getting your head wrapped around it. Like, he has the brain for it, so he can be like, but it's hard to explain to someone how to do it.
Yeah.
And it took me to about probably the halfway through it to be like, oh, I get it now. And it's how you overlap things. It's how you just have to always be thinking positive lap, and you can't think like you're building a square box, because you're not. Right. It's not even in.
There's kind of like ridge cap on all the triangle intersections and stuff too. Is that true?
No. So each window is a skylight. So you have to flash it like a skylight.
Yeah. And
then the each sort of ridge, I felt it over. I went old school and did felt over top, and then tar shingled over that, and everything so far so good.
Crazy. Okay. So let's leave that for now. So anyway, you grew up in that crazy golf ball house.
Yep.
Graduated here, and what did you do? Like, what were you into? Where did you go? What happened then?
So as a typical young man, being young and foolish, I did all sorts of odd jobs, and like most young people, wanted to go to university. Went to UVic for 1 year, realized that I can't sit for long enough. I don't have that in my body, sit long enough. So and then I took off to Europe for a bit, and then came back. And then I think I spent another year in the Okanagan doing construction work for my dad. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. This sucks. This is hard. It's the weather. I remember doing a roof in the middle of summer, a tin roof in the middle of summer, and like getting to the top of a tin roof and like after you just watered your shirt and being soaking wet. By the time you get to the top of the roof, you're already dry, and then now you're sweating again. And so the struggle's tied to being a young man doing that. So I was like, I got to get out of here.
That's late 90s.
So that would be late 90s. That would have been late 90s. So I did a bunch of other odd jobs. I did some forestry work. I did hack and squirt. I did firefighting.
What did you say? Forestry?
Forestry work, like hack and squirt. So
Hack and squirt.
mountain pine beetle. There was a mountain pine beetle that was rampant through here that they tried to take care of. We used to do this glow on thing where you'd put this basic arsenic in the tree. And as the tree had its sap pull up, it would kill the mountain pine beetle.
And that was called what? The practice of that?
They called it hack and squirt is what they called it. Yeah, hack and squirt.
Okay.
So and there's only like 6 weeks of the year that you could do it. It was a good job. But I worked at Mission Hill for a short period of time as well.
Winery. Yep.
And then and then I moved to Vancouver, followed a girl.
Okay.
Moved to Vancouver, worked at Molson's Brewery for a bit, and realized I just can't do factory work. I'm not a factory guy. So when I got laid off, I took a course, like one of those courses where when you get laid off, you're allowed to take these courses. And it was a film course because I'd met people that had done film work, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. Didn't make it through the course because I got hired right away.
Okay.
So I got hired right away, and I started working for a warehouse, like a lighting company. And then I got started, and then from the warehouse company, it's very similar to construction trades where there, lots of people like to live the life. And so one guy didn't make it into work whatever day it was. And I got to jump on a truck and work on a commercial. They liked me and kept me, and off I went.
So what do you mean you jump on a truck, work on a commercial?
So in the film business, they have different rental companies would send out a package with all the equipment on it. And so they called it a package truck manager. So they would send you off with the truck, and you would mark down all of the gear that they would take off the truck, and then they would charge accordingly.
Okay.
So we'd be running a generator. They'd be like different lights, different cables, different blah, 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 all that stuff. They pulled off different gel, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Because commercials are a little bit more, they're just tighter, right? Like smaller crew, kind of a tighter package. You're not going to have a massive circus show up.
Okay.
So, and when you do it, like some package truck guys sat on the truck, here you go. Some guys got into it and wanted to learn. And I was one of those guys. So I got into it and wanted to learn. And I got hired on, and they would ask for you, and off I went.
Okay. So you did commercials.
I did commercials
in Vancouver,
to begin with. That's what I started with. And then I started with, I did some non-union work, and then I started with one union and started doing episodic work. Yeah, I did a show called First Wave. And
so when you say you did a show,
so
what would you actually do?
So I started off as a lighting technician, and everyone does. You start off as a lighting technician typically. And then I got upgraded to Best Boy, which is called, and I worked on a series called Cold Squad. It was a Canadian series, crime series. And then,
so are you in the credits as, what did you say, best boy?
Best boy or assistant life? I prefer assistant chief lighting technician.
I like the best boy.
But best boy, best boy.
New nickname.
Yeah, it's like boy.
Okay, so best boy, and
best
then,
boy,
and then you worked up from that to what?
Then I worked up to chief lighting technician, but that was in the non-union world, and then I went back to best boy again, and then I did some gaffing afterwards. So gaffer or chief lighting technician is the other one. And then I did a tiny bit of camera work as well. Worked on, I mainly did episodic, and then in between the episodic, I worked with a lot of people that are super into working, like a lot. I worked 11 and a half months a year, like as much as you're allowed to work, we worked. So we sometimes we'd overlap shows. We'd be so busy, and that's where I learned how to step it up and become chief lighting technician. Because my boss would be like, "You got to wrap this up. I'm going to go start the other one, or you need to start this one. I'm going to go do this."
Yeah. And so what kind of, like, obviously now we're in the age of LED and all these different things. When you were doing that, I'm assuming like the lighting show was pretty different. Is that like?
I think, yeah. So I still have my membership, and I still have my FSR card and like a FE card and what have you. So I try and keep up to date as much as I can just by reading about it and what have you. But yeah, they use a lot more LEDs now for sure, and lots more digital work. When I was working, was still using film. No one uses film anymore, right? Like Like
weird.
everything's yeah, we're still changing roles and waiting for, you know, but yeah, so we use mainly tungsten films, like tungsten lights and HMIs as well. So
And so you kind of got good at that just by being on set and understanding how light works and what the director wanted and what the scene called for and where, like, was that kind of more your role, or more did you oversee people and making sure that everything was moving smoothly?
So the chief lighting technician or the gaffer is right by the camera typically.
Okay.
And they're the ones that's working with the director of photography, setting up the scenes.
Okay.
The best boy is the guy running around with the hair on fire in the background, making it all happen, making all of the work happen, make sure the workers are where they should be, make sure that all the stuff is ordered well ahead of time. So the kind of the management of that particular department.
Okay.
They fill out all the timesheets. They make sure that all of the, it depends on the setup you have with the gaffer. I did a lot of the invoicing for my bosses because they're stuck on set.
Sure.
Make sure that they're fed because they're miserable if they're not fed. Like just simple things. I mean, you're working long hours.
Yeah.
You know, like we used to call it Fraturday because you start on, you would start on Monday at 5:00 and we have to get our 10 hours turnaround. So if you do a 14-hour day or a 16-hour day, the day keeps on getting pushed along. So by the time you get to Friday, it's a 4:00 start. Well, you don't finish until Saturday.
That's a great term.
And it's like, and the birds are chirping and you're like, oh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So amidst that too, like I have no idea about this world, but I mean, if you think of like big budget movies and shows and you have directors and actors and like, I would assume there's some entitled, intense people
Absolutely.
that you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's lots of normal people too. And you get both, you get the best of both worlds. You know, there are some performers that are great and someone that would sit with you and tell you stories and laugh with you. And there are others that sit in their, you know, hide away and it's how they work their craft, I guess. My preference is always the ones that would sit and shoot the breeze with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you be willing to drop any names, like who are a handful of people that you've worked with that would be notable that we might know?
So I worked on a show called Dark Angel with Jessica Alba. I was the best boy on the second season of that particular show, and I worked. And James Cameron directed the last episode.
That's pretty sweet.
Intense. That dude is super duper intense.
I
Very
have another-
talented. Super intense.
I have another guest that we're going to be having before too long who's worked a bit with James Cameron, and he's got some intense stories too. Like that's incredible. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, and it's a hot kitchen. It's a really hot kitchen, and the film business in general is a hot kitchen because there's so much money involved and there's so many people involved, and it's like they call it hurry up and wait. And so for like 15 minutes, it's sheer terror because everything has to go perfectly when it's your turn.
Yep.
right?
And then you wait.
Super
if you-
unforgiving.
It's super unforgiving. And you go to the how come room. If you like, there's a production manager. How come? Right? Like why?
didn't this
Why?
work?
So if you get put on the report that, you know, lighting, blah, 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 or camera, blah, 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 then you go to the how come room and you have to explain, you know,
Shoot.
why did something that should have taken 5 minutes take half an hour?
Yeah.
Whoa. So you have to be
hilarious.
prepared, and you have to have all of the things at your fingertips. So if you ever are around a film person, they seem a little bit like kind of demanding and edgy. It's because that's what they're used to, right?
That's intense.
And they would ask for like some DPs, director of photographies, would ask for just as obscure as possible, the most obscure thing, something made in a hut somewhere far on the other side of the earth. And you have to find it, and it has to be here by Tuesday. Yep, but it's Friday and a long weekend. Somehow you have to make that happen.
I know the guy, again, Justin Weeb, I think it was his neighbor just down the road here. That was his job. He worked for a film, and he basically had like, you know, a warehouse full of just the most random, eclectic stuff, you know, so that when someone's like, I need that piece, that pottery or whatever, or if they didn't have it, it was his job to drive across who knows how long to find that specific piece. And that was like his full-time job, and he loved it. He would just go and
He's
you
the
know,
guy.
He's the guy that
the
gets
guy.
you all
Yeah.
the stuff to.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
He's
He's the guy.
He's the guy, and there's always the guy, right? There, and in Vancouver, there were a couple guys that you had to be getting good with, and you had to know. Like there was one, John Booth. He worked at White's, and he knew everything. He knew everything about lighting. That like if you needed to find like an odd thing lighting wise, he would be fine. Or another guy, another wild guy, super wild guy, was Dennis Jones, who's a rigging gaffer forever, and it could be 3 o'clock in the morning. You could call him, he'd still be awake. And he would still answer his phone, which maybe is not a good thing, but he would always say, "Hey Mo, what do you want?" And I'd say, "I need this thing." He's like, "Oh, I got one in a warehouse over here. I'll go get it." It'd be 3 o'clock, and I'd be like, it's Friday. What do you?" He's like, "I'll get it for you," and he would sort it out. Like, so it was about creating relationships with these people as well.
Right.
Like, if you weren't good with them, you're done.
Yep. What's the I always wondered, like, what's the pay scale? Like, how does it trickle down? Like, obviously, like it comes from, basically the movie company ownership, but like all this money comes in from wherever, then the actors get a huge chunk, then the director, and then like, where is lighting on the scale of that? And like, is it a good job? Is it a high paying thing? Or, how does that all work?
It's similar to kind of like the oil industry in that, the pay per hour is pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But it's not the pay per hour, it's the hours and it's the overtime and everything else. So in the union world, it changes depending on the budget of the show, and that's how the union contracts are set up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the non-union world, it's a flat rate and it's hard. It's tough. You have to love what you're doing. And I did a lot of weekend work. They called it, I can't remember what they called it, but we used to call it work for free. Dumb. Anyway, where they would say that they're going to pay you later.
Yeah.
But they never do. But you just do it for the love of it, or you do it to upgrade and become better at something. Sure. So if you don't want to be a lamp hop, you want to become a best boy, then you become a best boy on an independent or something like that. Right. You'll want to become a gaffer, then you go from a best boy. If you want to become a director of photography. And that's what I did towards the end is I wanted to try and shoot things. So I got flown to the Turks and Caicos and did a rap video and I did, some short films, but it's taxing. I wouldn't say it's a young person's life. You really have to be a particular person to be able to live it and handle it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that came to an end at some point. You decided that was enough of that and you're going to make a change. So why and how did that happen?
I looked around at the people I was working with, and I always wanted to have a family, and my wife and I were trying to have a family, and we lost a baby at 24 weeks, which was hard. And it kind of clicked. It was like, I need to be somewhere else. I need to start fresh. So, and I was already kind of thinking of other things. So I talked to a friend in the Okanagan. He's like, "I've got a great job for you. You could work in finance with me. You could do mutual fund and help advise." He said, "Just take these courses, these financial advisor. Just take these courses and you'll be good to go." I was like, "Okay, I'm going to help people. I'm going to do finance." As soon as I got here, he said, they have a book for you. You can start with a group of people or a group of people that are your clients to start with. I showed up. There was no book. It was 8 hours in a fluorescent office. And I did 16 hours, 18 hours. I did one shift. I did 2 back-to-back shifts where I was late. It was 36, I think it was 34 or 36 hours by the time I actually fell asleep. And I loved that more, or I hated the office more than 7.5 hours under the fluorescent lights. I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't wired for it. I did it for 4 months. I told myself, I'm going to do this for at least 6 months. I need to do this for a year. I could do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I just wasn't wired for it.
Okay. So that came to an end. You couldn't handle that. So then you transitioned.
So we moved from Vancouver. I guess that would have been the spring.
So time out when you went to Vancouver chasing a girl.
So that all fell apart. That fell apart. Right?
Okay,
it was a total disaster. Okay. And then I met my wife, Emily. Okay. I met my wife, Emily. We married in 2002. and we did, we renovated our house and we did all the things that we did. And she was going to school, so it was perfect that I was working in the film business. And that was part of the move as well, is we not only wanted to have a child, but I actually wanted to be a father. And it's really hard to be a father in the film business. Like to be their father, like someone who takes your kids to the evening boxing class or to be not tired and go skiing with them or whatever the case may be. And kudos to those dads that can do it in the film business. I couldn't. And there were a few, but most of the guys that I worked with were divorced. Like I'd say 90+% were divorced. And I love my wife and I wanted to stay with her and I wanted to make it work. So and she came kicking and screaming. She hated the idea of coming to the Okanagan.
Really?
Yeah. She says, it's dirty. It's like gray. It's dirty. And you know what?
So she grew up in the city, I'm assuming? So she's like
she grew up in Armstrong.
Really?
She grew up in Armstrong and then she moved to the city. And then she went back, graduated in Armstrong, and then she moved to the city and stayed in the city. And that's how we met. We became chums. We were like buddies.
Yeah.
I remember I was, my girlfriend at the time, this is convoluted, but anyway, I met her when she was very young and I ended up driving her to Vancouver to move back to Vancouver. She had a jewelry business at the time. She was pretty talented at that. Anyway, we moved back. She's kicking and screaming. And 6 months, because I said I lasted 4 months I was like, did we make a mistake? Should we go back? And she's like, no, I'm not moving back. This is great. I like it here. And she felt at peace. And then she went to UBC, finished up her schooling and became a teacher.
Okay. So then you got to find something else that's not
taking
the life out of you.
When I left the Okanagan, I was like, these are the things I don't want to move back to the Okanagan. I don't want to ever do construction again. I don't want anything to do with it ever again. I want nothing to do with construction. And what do? The first thing I did when I was doing the finance stuff was walk around and who do I know? I know construction people. So I talked to construction people. Hey, you want to buy mutual funds and life insurance? What do they look at me like? No.
What's that?
Exactly, yeah.
That's what I would have been like.
The worst was when I walked in. I remember walking up to this house in Summerline, just down the road from here, knocking on the door, and the husband opens up the door and he looks at me. He's like, oh, insurance guy's here. And I said, oh,
you're that guy.
I'm that guy. I don't want to be that. And it's a hard job and it's important. It's really important to have all that stuff, but it was really hard for me to sell it to people. And even though it's a necessity, it is a necessity.
And you do it because, like you said earlier, you want to help people.
Yeah.
But then when you see that body language and that thing, like, oh, you're that guy, you're like, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be helpful, and now I'm getting the look.
Yeah, exactly. So it just didn't work. It didn't work for me. My buddy is so good at it. He's really got he's got it down. He is super successful at it. I was not. I failed. And it's okay to fail. You learn.
So after that guy shut you down.
That was my moment. I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And I think that a lot of people fall off in that business. 2008 is when we moved here. 2008 we moved here, and then I started helping a buddy do a duplex. My buddy's a realtor, awesome guy, can't finish anything. Started a duplex. He just had to do it's that 1%. It's the hardest part of any job. That 1%, he couldn't get the 1% done. So I helped him wrap up and do the 1% on one of his duplex. And we did okay on selling our house in Vancouver. So I was like, well, want to do something? So we ended up buying we bought a lot, split it, built another duplex. And that's kind of where we took off in the construction business.
So that was your guys' like a partnership?
It was a partnership. We did a few projects, and this was in a lean times. This is not like
2008, you said.
So 2008, 2009, 2010. So
hard times.
Really hard times to be doing that.
That was the recession, right?
That's when you started.
Yeah. That's when I started. Yeah. So I started in the recession. So, and it's the best time to learn because you may as well learn when it's lean, right? Learn how to deal with it, learn how to budget, so we didn't make lots of money, but we didn't lose.
Right.
So we did okay. And we knew that we were building a reasonable product, and it was new and it was fresh for the Okanagan. I remember getting earful from different people as they walked by. Like, what are you doing selling that in this town? This town's not ready for that. And now the whole community that I was working in, this was on the Alexander kind of Churchill area. Now it's all modern looking homes, and
So you're kind of ahead of your times a little bit.
we were a little bit ahead of our times. But I wish I was building, 5 years later.
Right.
But
So then how long did you have that business?
so we did a few duplexes and some renos, and then we built a few homes out of town. Then we kind of parted. We didn't like, it wasn't amicable. We just like, what are we gonna do? There's nothing we can do right now. We got nothing. There's nothing to buy, nothing. So I ended up building my own house. And while I was building my own house, I ended up doing a really, really large reno. And you want to talk about learning curves. That was a massive learning curve for me, because most of my renos I had dealt with before were handshake deals. First time in my life, I sat in front of someone and was like, I don't feel good about this. I don't think I'm going to do it. I turned the fellow down 3 times. Third time, he's welling up. My wife's going to leave me. I just don't want you to retire off of me.
Okay.
Lesson learned. It was the hardest lesson I think I've ever had to learn. I ended up working for free for 6 months and losing $75K and it's my fault, my own fault, and not knowing how to do business and not understanding. So it was a hard lesson.
Okay.
Brought me to my knees. Like, my wife thought for sure I was gonna have a jammer, like, because I would come home so stressed. We're also in the middle of working on our house as well.
Yeah, kids.
So we pulled ourselves out of that, built our house, and I needed to find something to do. So I actually ended up going back and forth to film a little bit to prop up the cash, kind of get us back up and flush. And then I got hired on to one of the local bigger companies in town to do coordination. So construction coordination. So I would work under a project manager, and I did, we had 15, 16 jobs all throughout the valley. So I ran around like a headless chicken, and it was perfect for me. The company wasn't perfect for me. Great company, but that company wasn't perfect for me. But the job was perfect for me because my hair was on fire, just like it was in the film business. And I got to kind of have free reign to organize everything. And organized chaos that's my happiest place. The
So
more
funny.
mess, and everyone's brain is different, right? I think similar to an ADD brain. So it kind of wanders all over the place and busy. And I'm always thinking of different things at different times. So it was perfect for me. And so we were all the way down to Soyuz, Caramias, Costin, Penticton, Summerland, Naramata, all at the same time. And there was commercial jobs, and it was houses as well, renovations. It was everything. They called it special projects because it was a bigger company. It was kind of like a sort of a side thing with a bigger company. This company works up north. They do big jobs up north, and this is kind of filler work for them, or to keep their face local.
Yep.
But good company. I'm still talk to the owner on a regular basis. I did that for a year, and then just shy of a year, and I got headhunted. My buddy John was one of the sales guys for the company I worked for with you.
Okay.
And they sat me down, and they're like, "We got a job for you." I was like, "Okay, great. This sounds great." And this is what I was sold, just so you're clear on what I was sold. This is a 40-hour-a-week job. So if you want to do renos or anything on the side, no problem.
Okay.
First week, 65 hours. Second week, 70 hours.
How was your previous, the year you spent with the other company? What was your time? Because you're trying to invest in family and not be run off your feet too much.
It was better than film. I came home every night.
Okay.
And I wasn't traveling. I came home every night. So it was probably about 50 hours a week. So, and that's what I tried to trim it back to, which was hard, right?
Yeah.
Because the people involved with the company that I work with now, and that I started working with, they're intense, and they love what they do, and they're passionate about what they do.
So, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. Again, my interactions with you when you came on, and we're heading things up, I would say it was a breath of fresh air, in the sense that you brought like great organization and calm to what was at times a volatile, intense situation. And when you came on too, I mean, the operation wasn't huge yet.
Yeah.
Like there was, I think we were the only framers for the first year and a half,
Yeah.
something like that. And then by the time that it was ramped up to full pace, what was there, like 5 different framing crews at times?
I think we had 6 or 7 different framing crews. Like our maximum, I think we had almost 6 or 7 framing crews, depending on.
And like 100 tradespeople on site at times?
Easily, yeah.
Because I mean, I know there was times where I had, my hands in like as many as 7 houses at once at different stages. And there's like other companies doing a few. And in the midst of that crazy, I remember always thinking like, you never lost your cool. As much as I could see there was intensity behind your eyes and you're trying to keep everything all smooth. But now hearing, your background and what it meant to do lighting for ridiculous hours for super demanding people, and then dealing with the subdivision and the seniority that you worked under and their demands, like you managed that so well. So that kind of gives some insight as to how those skills you developed, earlier on in Vancouver days.
I felt at home. Like with so the two fellas that were in the office and working on site as well were, like I said, it's a hot kitchen, similar to film business, hot kitchen. I kind of embraced it. I kind of was like, these are my people. Like, I don't use the same language as them.
Yeah.
But they I get it. And their passion is, I think it took me some time, but their passion is what kept me on, especially the project manager's passion. And passion, once we kind of figured each other out, everything got so much better.
Well, it helped too. The project manager was like sharp as a tack, knew what he wanted, very black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember times where he would take walks through the subdivision and all the tradespeople would see him walking down, like everything better be as it should be, or you're getting an earful in front of everybody.
Yep.
Like he was an intimidating, scary guy. And I know I would say he at times, I felt like he would try to bully me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I know when and how to say no and have good conversations. So we developed a good, respectful relationship, but he pushed hard. And if he could get more out of you, he would take it.
Absolutely.
And at the same time too, given your background, like we talked about this a little bit earlier, off camera, was that there was things that you would also challenge me and like, can you do X, Y, and Z? Because like, where are the boundaries of what we can do, what we can get done? And there was times I'd have to tell you no.
Yep.
And there's times I'd be like, well, let's see if I shift this, that, and the other thing and go, yeah, we can make that happen. Because you're trying to close deals. We're trying to get people into houses. You're trying to stack up all the sub trades. I mean, the nicer thing too about a big subdivision like that too, and you've got all these different tradespeople on site all the time, you can pull them off of jobs versus, an individual isolated build where one tradesman drops the ball and screws up the schedule for the whole project.
Yeah.
So that's one nice thing about a bigger subdivision. You can bounce people around and people are no farther than, half a kilometer away.
Yeah. Your critical path is softer. So like when we're kind of creating a plan, there's a critical path. You can't drywall until you've insulated. You can't do something until you get an inspection or whatever the case may be. But having them at your fingertips made a huge difference. It made things a lot easier. And having the relationships with them makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the relationship with the sub trades, and if you can't find a common ground with them, you're done.
It was also, I would say, like a pretty premium, ideal kind of petri dish scenario in that as we were working on efficiencies with the homes, trying to figure out ways to work through the step code, that having all of those tradespeople all in the same area, as we're trying to develop new methods and techniques for how to create more efficient houses, we could have meetings on site regularly to be like, okay, this house, we're going to try and implement this air barrier in this way, and we're blocking here. Okay, heating guy, this is something you've been doing, can't do this anymore. We're going to spray from here. We're going to sheet this. Like that was a huge evolution through that project.
And we were able to do it economically that way as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part, that people are really struggling with the step code because they don't have that opportunity to have all the trades around all at the same time. And I would continuously drag my 3 main subs in. You would be ahead of time, so you would already have the Coles Notes version of what I needed to have done. But then I bring my three subs that are going to make a mess of everything and wreck all my stuff, and I bring them together and explain to them, and then we would map out where we're going to go, how we're going to do it. And you can't. It's harder to do that if you're custom off in Naramata or off in the sticks somewhere, because you're going to drag all three of them. They all have to be there, and they all have to be paying attention.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
What
So
did
just,
you? Sorry, you go ahead.
just really quickly in regards, just so people can, who are watching and listening, understand, in our location, in our region, in regards to the step code, just briefly, what does that look like? Because we've gone from basically from 1 to step 5 is kind of the...
Correct. Yeah. So you're 1 to step 5 in it, and 1 is basically you're just testing the house to see where it leaks. Where it leaks. So there's an air test, but there's more to it than that. There's a mechanical side to it and what have you. And then as you work your way up, we're at step 3 right now. All our houses need to meet step 3 in Penticton, which means that they have to meet a certain efficiency, air exchange. They have to have a certain type of furnace in it to make sure that it meets the standards. And then as you work your way up to step 4 and step 5, it becomes net zero, or net zero ready anyway. So, and the code is constantly changing, constantly.
When is it supposed to get to step 5? When is that?
I don't know. It's coming up. It's coming up soon that BC wants to mandate step 5.
Sure.
It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for lots of it. For us, we've been ahead of the curve the whole time, and that's tied to the PM. Like the PM on our job site, he is like, I dork out on the building science, but he takes it to the next level, and he downloads a lot of information on me, and my job is to figure out how to do it effectively. And so it's not going to cost us more money, because just the owner of the company is like, I don't care what you do, just don't cost me any more money.
Yeah.
So that's our goal. That's our goal. So we do it with rebates. We do it with efficiencies. We do it with, and so having a lot of sub trades on site allows us to work out all the kinks and work on the efficiencies.
Yeah. Well, I know there was builders in the area that were going to the point of like doing exterior insulation on houses. All these practices that would basically satisfy the code requirement, but in really expensive, potentially slow ways that were difficult to do.
Yeah. And
through that development, we found all other kinds of ways to satisfy the code with very, very simple design changes. And again, like you say, those your 3 main subs that is provided, they all played nice and looked out for one another. You could get those efficiencies out of fairly basic building practices that weren't that different, but you got huge efficiency out of them.
Yeah, and it helps with the modeling. So we've got a great guy out of Kelowna that does our modeling for us, and he works with us. And I think that's important too. Yeah. So the PM deals with the modeler. The modeler also I'll talk to the modeler as well. We'll figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and then we test it. And because you do the door test, the air test, you really prove whether or not you did the job or not. Like there's no hiding it. If you mess it up, you mess it up. So
in that regard, I want to give you one story, an example of where you put this whole system in place and one subtrade totally botched it. You know, where they hacked poly apart, or they did something that you found after the fact, like, oh, this is why our blower test was complete trash, because somebody chopped. What's the
bump? It would be a bump out. I've seen it a number of times now, and so I check every time. It was a bump out by a bathroom behind a tub. It's like a free space. You can't see. It's hidden. They did it after the fact. It was an AC line because we don't put our AC lines in Canada because in the wintertime, we'll typically prep a line set out. So, but we sometimes we'll be further along because we don't think about the AC until the spring. So sometimes in the building process that gets slipped or missed, or or we didn't core hole where we should have cored it, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, in a couple of cases, they've blown through a bump out or any sort of hidden wall. And then all of a sudden my air test is blown out of the water. We did really well though. Like considering how many homes we did, we were always like step 3 and step 4. Very rarely were we any lower than that. And our air exchanges, like the PM mapped out everything, absolutely everything from top to bottom. And so we could see where we were and what we did different and how we changed things. And we had to really be innovative with how we did it, because we were not doing the prescribed way of building. We were doing it the modeled way of doing it. So we really had to create something that would work for us.
Yeah. That collaborative approach to those things too throughout the building process is so crucial. In not just the efficiency of a home, but just in the efficiency of the building of the home. So I know, like for me, for instance, I always got involved in great depth with engineer before we start the building, with the floor designer, with the truss company, to try and make sure there's harmony throughout the whole process. Because I think, as a from a framing standpoint, what is super common to witness is the framer shows up, expects everything to be all ready, and then just bitches and moans when whatever doesn't show up. There wasn't enough studs. The joist was done wrong. It was a design, and they just criticize everybody else. So when you can be proactive and make those design changes at the planning stage, you put yourself so much farther ahead. So again, the PM on the job who's so super strategic about the entire process, and then imparts that responsibility to you to actually get all the appropriate people playing nice together.
Yeah.
And you're setting up for the benefit of the people around you. It makes a hard job so much more enjoyable. And then you end up playing nice, and there's actually mutual respect and a good working environment. Like it pays huge dividends, and like literally in the end.
Yeah, it's important when one of the things I promoted a lot especially when we have our safety meetings and Aaron groans, safety meeting. But it was good to bring all the sub trades in together, not just for the safety meeting or the management meeting, but so everyone can look around the circle and look at who, and I would say this on a regular basis to people, look at the person to the left, look at the person to the right. So when you leave a huge pigsty behind, or if you cut through his joist system, or if you, whatever the case may be, look at that person. That's who you're screwing over. That's the person you're screwing over. Look at them and understand that it's not nobody, it's somebody. So clean up after yourself. So respect the next subtrade. You know what we walk, you know what the expectation is. So do what you said you're going to do.
I'm curious to know, like, between you guys, I mean, obviously I built and stuff like that, but I wasn't really around long to understand what trades, like obviously I saw certain people destroy some of the work we do and then you have to come back. But what were the trades, like what would, like say your guy, like someone who's framing, what would people be annoyed that you would do, and then vice versa? What are the things that they would come in and destroy that you'd have to go and like, what? Because I'm sure there's all kinds of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, from the framing standpoint, we'd get all the sub trades just totally livid about our point loads that are in their way.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is structure. There's no, this is where these have to be.
Exactly. I can't help you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get some of those guys like, I don't care. I'm not asking. I'm just cutting holes.
Yeah.
And they chop stuff apart.
Yeah. That's a bearing wall. Thank you very much. We got to redo this now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like there's a time and a place where you can cut an obscenely large hole in a very strategic place that looks insane. And people would look at it like, that's totally been haggard. No, that's structurally designed to function that way. It's completely fine. But you won't know that unless you ask. And you can't apply the process from a different job to your current job because it was okay in that situation. This situation may be different. So I was always like, before you chop holes in things, come and find me. I'm on site. And that was what drove me the most nuts, is that they would, without asking, make an assumption that now I've got to actually double up joist through a whole living area because they've chopped through, they've made holes too big, too close to a bearing point, and the whole floor now is structurally hacked apart. And we had tin bashers at times chop apart bearing walls. And I'm like, there's virtually nothing holding this up. I'm like, do you realize now that this wall is the center span of these joists? If this fails, people will die. This floor will collapse. Like this isn't like,
this is a failure.
This is major danger issue.
I had a really tough boss. I loved him. Awesome boss. And his line used to be, and this is back in the film business. I don't want you to think. Your job isn't to think. Your job is to know. And if you don't know, then ask. So don't think. There's no I thought. It's I know. So if you know, then you know.
Yeah.
But he was a tough, imposing man. So you kind of like it drilled it into your head. You got like, okay, I got this. So I need to know. And same thing. I would say, ask. And if I don't have the answer, and I don't always have the answer, I'll find out for you.
Yep.
don't hide it. Please don't hide it, because eventually I'm going to find it, or worse, the client's going to find out.
Yeah.
And then we all look like a bunch of buffoons.
Yeah.
Well, I think of a couple of the houses that guys sheeted incorrectly, and then we're in there chopping apart floors and putting backing and gluing stuff, like, and some of those were after there was some flooring, like there was some messes made where people again tried to hide stuff, fly under the radar, not ask questions.
But I think the worst was when we had to tear that. We actually had to. We had young framers, really, really green, wet behind the ears, so wet behind the ears, and we had frost walls inside, and they were bearing on the frost walls. You remember that because you were the one that had to tear it apart.
It was Joe. Didn't Joe get to do it, and he got to keep all the wood?
Yeah,
we basically, it was luckily it was a small structure, but we had to tear the whole house apart and redo it, because I remember you just say, I can't fix this. There's no way I can actually fix this, Jared.
So it got passed to me from you guys once that crew was booted, and I had been building houses right across the street, watching these three guys. The way they built, like this, we're going to be fixing that. Yeah. We're going to be over there. I could see it coming. And on top of that too, one thing that stuck out to me is the nails they went through. Yeah. They used coil nailers, and they were so trigger happy. It was insane. So I remember the senior officer on site, PM, it hurt him so much when I had to tell, like, this is, if I'm going to take this on, this is what I have to do. Yeah. And he had to swallow her, like, just fix it. Like,
just do it. Just do it.
So basically, the stage of the job was there's a foundation, the entire basement was framed, there's a floor system on, and exterior walls.
Correct. Yep. First floor. Yep.
And I went and grabbed my laser, and I'm like, I know I'm going to find. And I set it on the floor inside, and I shot my laser beam across the floor, and it should have been 3 inches all the way across. At the edge, it was 3. In the center, it was like 1.5, and then it was 3 again at the other side. So the center of the floor system is got this huge hump in it.
Yeah.
And you go in the basement, and they just gang cut all the studs for every interior wall. And then it's just going to be whatever the slab is. And they didn't actually check their wall heights. So all the interior walls are high. Everything's bearing on that. The floor system isn't even really touching the foundation.
Correct.
If we put trusses on, they're going to bear on interior walls and be hovering over exteriors. So we ended up knocking down all the exterior walls up top, and then gutting the basement down to the bearing walls, cutting the bearing walls down so the joist would sit down. And the deal was, disassembly from us was free, because my guy Joe did it.
Yeah.
With the trade-off that he could take all the lumber.
Perfect.
On the weekends, right? Wasn't that like a weekend?
After work, on weekends.
Yeah, it had to be done in a reasonable amount of time. I remember that house. I remember just sitting on the side of the road looking and seeing it daylight.
Yeah.
Like the plate daylighting. I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be that way.
Because didn't Joe end up doing, he took like so long, but again, all the nails, because you said they were trigger happy. It was just
pulled nails is insane.
But then he used all that wood to do ridiculous things at his place. Like, I just wish we could take a camera into what Joe created.
It was insane.
Out of all that.
One of the things he did, this is nuts, in his basement of his house, this old house that he renovated, he pulled down all the ceilings, got it all exposed. So it was just the 2x10 joists and the sheeting on top.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to have this all kind of industrial, cool looking floor. And leave all the mechanical stuff exposed. And to make it look nice, I want it to look like it's like stacked 2x6s on edge on top, like a bowling alley. So underneath, I'm going to take all this 2x6 I tore out of this house. Yeah. I'm going to rip them into 1/2-inch little pieces and put them sideways across between every single joist and glue and pin nail them on. So you go into his basement, and it's just like all the 2x10s on edge with 1.5-inch strips.
It's insane.
Incredible.
And it looks mint.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Painted it all white. And like it just looks, it looks so cool.
So crazy. Yeah. So anyway, that was such a mess. Again, that's when I saw coming, and then we had to get that thing all reframed and deal with the squares, all the rest of it. But that was one heck of a mess. That was a rough one.
One thing for sure that is, you talk about Joey, you had a lot of neat people that you hired. Like, not all were top tier, but they only lasted as long as they lasted. Yeah. But there's some neat people that you hired, which I thought was pretty cool, and I fostered some of those relationships, with some of the fellows.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a great time. A good season. That towards the end was kind of a weird time to kind of be phasing out. Yeah. And getting into this, and I know that was a little bit of stress, for you to deal with the PM, to be like, Luke's not here all the time anymore.
It made a huge difference.
Yeah.
It makes it like, because no one loves your company more than you.
Yeah.
And no one takes care of your company more than you.
Yeah.
And you're the man. I'd say all company. I was just talking to my mechanical guy about that. Same thing. And he said, and I said, you can't take it personally. You can't take it personally that no one loves your company as much as you, but you just have to work with it. And I think you still did great. Like it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's a hard transition too.
Yeah.
Right.
And
you still got to pay the bills.
I did have great guys, but things just aren't the same when you're not there.
Yeah. You're the man. It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
I was curious actually just to know, like, Jared, with you, early on you mentioned how you wanted to be a father. That's something that, you wanted, you and your wife wanted to have a kid, you wanted to be a father, and you wanted to be able to be there for them. But then at the same time, hearing your story and given the type of person you are, that, the hair on fire, going around doing all this kind of stuff. And yet at the same time, I've seen you at almost every, Christmas pageant for the kids at school and the sports things and stuff like how do you manage knowing that that's the type of person you are to be able to be the father that you want to be with your kids? I mean, and obviously we haven't done it all perfect. That's a really tricky balance, but what's that like?
What's it like? It's hard. It's hard to be pulled. My wife's friend says that we're Irish. We're Irish because we always say yes. We can make it happen. We can make it happen. And I don't know where it comes from, but
are you Irish?
I am Irish, actually. Well, I'm partially part Irish. Irish citizenship. But because we never say no, and we always say yeah. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. But it's hard. It's hard, and you want to always you always want to try and do what you say you're going to do, because people don't respect you if you say something and you don't do it, or you do something different. But I don't know. I try and balance both. I don't sleep much. My wife is the same. She's busy. She's my eldest son. He has ADHD, and he's got a double dose of it from both of us. My wife, if I sit down, what are you doing? What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm sitting. Why? What's your plan?
Yeah.
It's my plan. My plan is to sit and have a coffee. But after that, what's your plan? Well, I don't.
That's funny.
So I have my own boss.
Sure.
Yeah, and she's so when I get home, it's I don't know. You do the best you can to balance life, and I love my family more than anything. I love my work, but I love my family more, and I will do anything for them. And I will, if I have to stop work, then I'll make it up on the weekend, or I'll do whatever it is to get to the finish line. There were some nights where I worked until 9, 10 o'clock at night to get to the finish line, especially when we had a lot of houses. We were delivering 2 houses a week, and I was the one that was managing from foundation on, but I was also the one handing the house over.
Yep.
So there were quite a few details tied to that.
Quite a few.
Yeah, like the in between is, and then you hand over, and then it gets. There's the legacy work afterwards, right? So the first couple of years of a subdivision, great. Just have to build the house, hand them over, whoop, done. But then all of a sudden, every house is a living, breathing thing. It inhales and exhales, and it has its issues. And so you got to take care of your clients. You got to take care of all those things. So now I'm taking care of those things, still working on that, and handing over houses.
Right.
How many houses did we build in a year? What was the best year?
I think
there's one I know I framed 34 houses one year.
Yeah. So, and I think that was the same year that we started on the townhomes, and it was over the top. I can't remember what you and what the owner said. It was enormous. I think we did 45 homes that year, or 40 some odd homes that year, plus part of the townhomes.
Yeah.
It was a tough year for a small company like us. We're not a huge company.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, what's the, I mean, again, I know when I was doing my house, and a bit of my story and just how that house kind of kicked my butt, and I ended up having a pretty hard go. And I know you telling me in a similar way, that, you would push yourself to the max. And, I was just curious, like, what's your, I don't know, what do you learn from that? Like cause again, like you said, you're a yes guy, that's this Irish thing in you, but where's the healthy point of saying no? And like, is that something that you've learned or that you want to learn, or, I don't know. That's just an interesting.
You get to learn it over time.
Yeah.
And you learn that it's okay to say no.
Sure.
And that was a hard lesson for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really hard to say no because you don't want to disappoint the person,
Right.
but it's okay to say no. And I think you learn after time that people actually respect you more if you say, you know what, no. And
Right.
I know I respect a sub trade, and it's funny because I tell my sub trades, tell me if you can't make it,
Yeah.
and you're not going to show up, tell me so I can get help or I can figure something else.
Mhm.
If you don't tell me, I can't fix the problem. But if you
Right.
just don't show up, then you hose me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Then I can't, then now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And you don't just hose me, you hose the other 10 trades that
Sure.
are lined up, that I have scheduled lined up behind you.
Mm.
So just say, I'm not going to show up. Okay. I'll work around that, or
Yeah.
I'll hire someone else, or I'll
Sure.
look for someone else, or maybe I'll just wait for you
Or do it yourself.
or do it myself. That there has been a time or two. Yeah. You know who the boss is because he's the guy at 7:00 at night sweeping or whatever, right? Like that's the,
But that's interesting. Those couple key things you focused on are the same bits of business advice I give people if they ask. Like, what are the most important things starting a business? Like, to me, you do what you say you're going to do.
mm-hmm.
So you show up when you say you're going to. And if something's going to change, you let the person know, you communicate.
Yeah.
You let them know what's going on. If you're going to be a couple minutes late, just let them know.
Yeah.
It's out of respect to them. It's how you'd want to be treated.
Yeah.
And that's so rare in the trades that people are so entitled. They don't say anything.
Yeah, for sure. And especially over the last 3 years, it's been like amplified. But there was my wife went to school with a girl, and her father was one of the head monkey monks at Leadcore. And that's what he said to me. And I remember taking that to heart. He said, I said, how did you do it? You were a framer, and now you're like one of the like main dudes at Leadcore. Like you're in charge of like $1 billion projects. And he said, I look people in the eye. I say, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I do it.
Yeah.
I said, that's it. He said, well, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it to heart. And I am not perfect at that,
Mm-hmm.
but I do the very best that I can.
Yeah. Doing what you say you're going to do to the best of your ability.
Yep.
And then communicating when you can't.
Yep.
Do what you said you were going to do and owning that.
Yep.
Combined with the willingness to say no when you know you should.
That's
Those
the
key
hardest one, right?
things.
That's the hardest one for me, for sure.
Yeah.
I always want to be like, yeah, okay, if I do this, I can do that. If I juggle this, then I can make that happen.
And the downside with that is that theoretically this should work. And then one little wrench drops into the machine somewhere. I'm like, now my whole plan, I've overpromised, I've got no margin, and then things go sideways. So those are lessons I know I've learned the hard way sometimes. Like I have to say no, even though maybe I could say yes, but the stars have to align so perfectly for this to all fall together that I'd be wiser to leave a little bit of margin, maybe make a little bit less money, so I can maintain my reputation and respect the people that I'm interacting with.
Yeah, that time management is so hard because again, all of us have learned that, and I mean, it's pretty much everybody learns that lesson. Being, I'm going to make this cool. I remember remember that big thing I made in my living room with all the different cubby holes. I had my TV and all these different kind of cool little art pieces, or whatever. I remember I'm like, oh, it's just like 8 pieces of plywood. I'm going to make this cool thing. I thought at my house, I said to my wife, I'm going to work on Saturday night and we'll make this. Like weekends, first of all, like I cut all those boxes and then I made some wrong thing. And so I ended up cutting them all back around and realized that I'd done it properly the first time. And so it was just a big thing. But that time management aspect, I think is huge. And I would assume that when you say yes to something, you've gotten so much better at being like, I think that I could do this in X amount of time, but realistically it's going to take 3 or 4 times that amount, right? And I guess the other thing I was wondering, financially, as you're doing a big project like that, like realistically, you probably have to have some huge contingency fund to be like, things are going to go wrong. That's just the way it is. How do I prepare for when things do hit the fan?
There's a line item for that. There's always a line item for that.
Yep.
You have to have it in every budget. There's a line item for safety. There's a line item for contingency.
Sure. If there's not, you
need
need to put that in.
Yeah, there should be a time optimism is what a sales guy, one of the realtors coined. Jared, you seem to be a bit of a time optimist.
That's a good one. That's a good way to say it.
I said, yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can do it. And the problem is, if you do it, this is where you get caught. So the stars align. You do it. You make it to the deadline. Well, the big boss is like, Well, you did it last week.
Yeah.
You
That's
got that
the new
Let's see if you
expectation.
can do it again.
Yeah.
You got that club in your bag now.
Yeah, exactly. You carry that.
Cool. Well, that's a lot of good to take away from that. Thank you so much for being willing to sit and chat and share.
No worries.
And I could see doing it again, getting into more depth, a lot of this stuff. If you're open to it, maybe we'll bug you again another time.
No worries.
Thanks again, Brad.
Mm-hmm. It
for
was a
your
pleasure.
insight.
That's
Thanks,
fun.
Brad.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Take care. We'll see you again next time.